Residential Report Writing and Case Studies. Chapter 4, the Uniform Residential Appraisal Report, page 23. Site Section, Zoning. Specific zoning classification. Generally, the residential zoning classification contains two parts, a letter and a number. The letter is normally R, which identifies the area as residential in character. The letter is normally followed by a number, which identifies the density allowed for that particular zoned area. For example, R1 stands for residential with a density of 1. Generally, the lower the number, the lower the allowed density for the area. This may vary from municipality to municipality, especially for communities with highly detailed and strictly enforced zoning requirements. Zoning description. The zoning classification only tells part of the story. R1 can mean different things in different locations. The zoning description must also be stated on the form. For example, low density single family district. Zoning compliance. These terms are identified in the report. Legal, that's highlighted, refers to the fact the property is being used in compliance with the current zoning ordinance. Legal nonconforming identifies a grandfathered condition. The property was in compliance with previous zoning ordinances, but is not in compliance with the current ordinance. The current property use is allowed to continue in a legal non-conforming status. Properties falling into this category are allowed to continue to exist, but there are restrictions in place to ensure their eventual demise. If the improvement stands vacant beyond the stated time period outlined in the zoning ordinance, the property will have to be brought into compliance with the current zoning ordinance. If the improvements are damaged beyond a certain percentage or dollar amount, the property will have to be brought into compliance with the current zoning requirements. The provisions for elimination of the legal non-conforming status are written into the zoning ordinance and will vary from municipality to municipality. No zoning. There is no zoning ordinance in effect for the area. This is common in some unincorporated areas. Land use may be controlled by deed restrictions. Illegal. This usually applies to the actual use of the site. The improvements are not being used in accordance with the allowable uses outlined in the zoning ordinance. This frequently refers to a house in a residentially zoned area being used for a commercial enterprise. It could also account for the single-family home being used as a multifamily apartment building without some sort of variance or special use permit from the zoning authority. Generally speaking, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will not purchase a mortgage on a property if its current use is not legal. Is the highest and best use HBU of subject as improved or as proposed per plans and specifications? The present use. The form asks you to answer yes or no to this question. In most situations, you will find the highest and best use for residential properties to be their present use. If the subject property is a single-family home and single-family residential use is the only permitted use, then you do not have to engage in an in-depth analysis to determine the highest and best use. In this example, the present single-family use is the only, that's highlighted, allowable use for the property. So its current use would be the highest and best use. A reminder, simply checking the box indicating that the property's current use is the highest and best use is not, that's highlighted, a summary level of detail. To meet the requirements of USPAP, a summary, that's highlighted, of your support and rationale for the property's highest and best use must be included in the report. End of page. Page 24, Site section, Utilities and External Factors. Utilities. The presence of utilities and off-site improvements is usually determined by visual observation. If other than public, identify the type of utility in use. Your comments are required to indicate the effect on the value of the property. The presence or absence of public utilities and/or off-site improvements can affect the value of the site, particularly if they are not in line with the neighboring properties in that market area. Utility types you may encounter are public utilities, electric utility, gas utility, water utility, and sewer utility. Private utilities, generator electric, propane gas, well water, and septic system. If the subject is located in a gated community on a private street or road, a written and recorded maintenance agreement may be required by the lender/client prior to loan approval. When the street or road is private, you will need to comment on the condition of the private facility and discuss how marketability and value of the property are impacted. FEMA Special Flood Hazard Area. If the property is located in a special flood hazard area as designated by FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, this must be indicated in the report. Special flood hazard areas assigned by FEMA are noted to be areas with A and V designations. Other areas which are not special flood hazard areas include B, C, and X. A list of flood designations and an explanation of each category can be found on the FEMA website, www.fema.gov. Are the utilities and off-site improvements typical for the market area? This question is meant to reveal if the subject is non-conforming or atypical with respect to utilities or off-site improvements. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac state the property's utilities must be typical for the area. If most of the properties in the area have a well and septic system, then Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will accept the property and purchase the loan. The appraiser must provide the support for what is typical for the area. Are there any adverse site conditions or external factors that would affect the marketability and/or value of the property? This question entails several different areas of concern for the appraiser. Number one, are there any adverse site conditions relating to use or utility? Some of the characteristics to consider are excess land area, atypical frontage, odd size or shape, inadequate drainage, flood zone, unusual topography, such as a steep embankment, etc. Number two, is there a market impact due to apparent easements and/or encroachments? An encroachment is the outright use of another owner's property without his or her knowledge or approval. This condition may have a negative influence on the property value. Typical utility easements usually do not affect the value of a property. However, other types of easements, such as access rights of way, may be detrimental to the property rights of the property owner and may affect value and/or marketability. The appraiser must determine whether this is detrimental to marketability and value for the subject property. Number three, is there external obsolescence, either economic or locational? External obsolescence is a loss in value due to conditions outside the boundaries of the subject property. Some examples of commonly found external obsolescence are: number one, property fronts a noisy and/or busy street. Number two, property backs to a commercial property. Number three, property is across the street from a commercial outlet. Number four, property is near the railroad tracks. Number five, property is in or near the flight path of an airport. The appraiser must evaluate the conditions and determine their impact on marketability and value of the subject. Number one, are there any adverse environmental conditions? It is the appraiser's responsibility to look for apparent adverse environmental conditions and toxic hazards in and around the property site. If the appraiser becomes aware of possible adverse environmental conditions during the research for the appraisal assignment, that disclosure is also required. Number two, are there any adverse land uses which could be classified as either external obsolescence or an adverse environmental factor? Residential land use should be protected and/or buffered from nuisances and hazards caused by neighboring properties, land use. Failure to provide such protection may cause a negative impact on the marketing and value of the subject. The appraiser must analyze market data and support the adjustment to value due to incompatible land uses in conjunction with a residential area. Naturally, the appraiser should be able to support any comments concerning the marketability of the subject and impacted value of the subject property due to noted adverse conditions. End of page.